welcome to the Pop Council Podcast, the show where we cover everything in pop culture. Each week on the show, we'll discuss topics in the geek world as well as various fandoms such as Disney, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, theme parks, and everything in between. I'm Jami, Philbrick, entertainment journalist and critic for We Live Entertainment and member of the Hollywood Critics Association. Today we have a great show for you, and we will be discussing Loki Season 1 finale spoilers, Tom Hiddleston to appear in as Loki in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Deadpool meets Korg, WandaVision's Matt Shakman to direct a new Star Trek movie, Antonio Banderas in Indiana Jones 5, the final Snake Eyes trailer, the teaser for Why the Last Man, the TV series, and much, much more. As always, it would not be a Pop Council podcast without my co-host with me, Wendy Lee Zadie. Hey, Wendy, how you doing?
Hey, Jami, doing good. Prepping myself for another hot day here in LA.
Oh man, it is going to be another scorcher, but it was a nice weekend. It's always nice to feel the summer now that it's finally here.
Indeed.
It wouldn't be a Pop Council podcast without another great member of the HCA joining us to discuss all these topics. I would like to welcome HCA member and Rama from Rama Screens. Rama!
Welcome!
What's up, buddy? How you doing, Rama?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm stoked. I'm nervous, but I'm glad to be joining you guys.
Nothing to be nervous about. Rama, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, what you do, where they can check your stuff out.
Yes, my name is Rama. I am the owner of website ramascreen.com, and I'm also a YouTuber at youtube.com/ramascreen1, member of Hollywood Critics Association, big fan of movies, TV, anything nerdy and geeky. So, looking forward to joining you guys in today's discussion.
Well, Rama, I've known you for a long time, and to me, you'll always have a special place in my heart as the longtime reporter who at every press conference would have a Clark Kent sort of costume on, the Superman t-shirt underneath. I know you don't do it as much anymore, but that's how I knew you. I was like, oh, who's the Superman guy? Oh, the Superman guy's asking questions at non-Superman things. It was the best. It was always the best. And I got to imagine that really sort of inundated you with a lot of the stars that you would interview probably recognize you as like the Superman guy. It was kind of like your calling card for a long time. So I knew that you would be perfect to talk all these things with us on the Pop Council podcast today, because you love this stuff, right?
Yes, I do. Bring it on.
Awesome.
Found the right person.
Yeah, we did, Wendy. Yeah, we did. So let's get right into it, because this is the moment we've been waiting for. We've been talking about it for the last 6 weeks. On the Pop Council podcast. And of course, I am referring to the finale of Season 1. We will be getting a Season 2, but we'll talk about that in a second. Season 1 of Disney Plus's Loki series. And of course, Wendy, we've been talking the last couple of weeks, and specifically last week, about what is the secret of the TVA? Who is behind the timekeepers? And this is not a Mephisto. You and I were right. As it was revealed, of course, that Kang, the conqueror, known here as what was it? The man who
the one who remains.
The one who remains. Yes. Also a comic book character from Marvel, but that sort of was combined with the idea of Kang and Kang's variants. So we discover, and of course, Jonathan Majors, who we knew had been announced as being the villain Kang in Ant-Man and the Wasp 2, or I guess Ant-Man 3, however you want to look at it. So we had talked about how that was sort of unusual for Marvel. You know, they still haven't really officially announced who's in the new Spider-Man movie, and that comes out in a couple of months. So it was unusual for a film that hasn't even gone into production yet to all of a sudden announce their main villain. But we saw that there was a specific reason why. So, of course, Loki and Sylvie discover that is who is running or is running the TVA, I guess, or who's sort of behind the TVA. And it sets up a lot. This is sort of a talky episode, a lot of exposition, a lot of explanation given by this variant of Kang. But basically, he gives Sylvie and Loki an offer. He says, you can go back to the TVA, and you can run it as you wish, but the TVA needs to stay to, keep the timeline running smoothly. Or you can kill me and get your revenge, and there's a million other variants of me, even worse than me, coming. And I think that very much sets up what we're going to be seeing to a certain degree in Spider-Man, certainly in Multiverse, in the Multiverse of Madness, the Doctor Strange sequel, and going forward, certainly in a season 2 of Loki and beyond. So let's just start with the Jonathan Majors Kang of it all. And Rama, let me start with you. Did you see this coming like Wendy and I did? How did you feel about it when it finally came? What was your reaction?
It was a surprise to me, and I have to preface it by saying I grew up more of a DC fan, not Marvel. Marvel, more of a late bloomer for me. So Jonathan Majors showing up as Kang was, to me, was a surprise. But I've been a big fan of Jonathan Majors for a while, even in Lovecraft country. So for him to be joining MCU was just like, yes, this is like the perfect casting, and he's a great actor. And you're right, it was a chatty episode. It was, to be honest, that conversation between Loki, Sylvie, and Kang, it was hard for me to sit through that. It was just like so long. But it was a great setup for the next one because, like you said, he's going to be the enemy in Ant-Man 3. And it was a very earth-shattering reveal. I think they could not have cast a more perfect actor for the role.
Yeah, I loved his sort of like bombastic energy, and kind of you got the sense that this is a guy who has seen everything and been around time and different times a lot. And, the time traveling, I would imagine, could mess with your head a little bit. So he's a little out there. I like the performance. I will say, Wendy, again, we sort of saw this coming. We talked about it last week. Like, they had kind of written themselves in the corner that if they didn't give us Kang this week, I would have been disappointed. But I got to be honest, at the same time, I was a little underwhelmed because I did guess it right. I actually had to watch it a couple times to really kind of get into it. And it is very talky. But what did you think about our prediction coming true and Jonathan Majors' performance?
Okay. First of all, we did say we likely think that is Jonathan Majors, but we were wrong in the prediction as well, because we also said, because of the whole Mephisto thing with WandaVision, it's likely that he won't show up, and if he does show up, it won't be his face. We all said that. Tessa texted me immediately the next day, and was after the episode had aired, and she was like, we were so wrong about what we think. And I was like, exactly. So I do want to say, like, we were right in what we were hoping to see, but we were wrong in the way we thought we were going to see it. I was really happy to see, and shocked, by the way, to see Jonathan Majors' face, because I just didn't think they were going to do that. I really didn't think that we would see him in the TV show until next season. Right. I thought that the reveal, maybe they would go kind of the Thanos route as far as introducing him in mid or post-credit scenes leading up to Ant-Man and the Wasp or Ant-Man Quantumania. So that's what I really thought was going to happen. So imagine my surprise. And I see you guys in the chat saying, yes, it is not like Kang, it's not Kang the Conqueror. It is, I guess, if you want to get like,
yes,
yeah, if you want to get really specific, you can call him Immortus if you want to. But he does go kind of in a very roundabout way to explain, like you said, it's a talky episode, which I really enjoyed, is that, he's had many names, and he specifically like enunciated the Conqueror. Like, there was that very specific, it's kind of like, oh, okay, just like really dropping that hint in there that he is, if you go down this route, you're not going to get me. I'm pretty bad, but like there's worse. So I actually felt that it was a bit talky for the parts that we were in the void, or should I say like at the end of time. But I like that, because you don't just drop in Jonathan Majors, an actor of his caliber who can act and not give him all this fun dialogue to let him play with the character, especially because he's not quite yet King the Conqueror. So this was, to me, very, very fun to watch, especially for these three actors in a room together. I'm just like, man, like what I would give to kind of be at the table read for this episode. I will say I was slightly underwhelmed with the Mobius part, like the TVA part. that is where a little bit of overwhelm came in, because I thought the confrontation between, and I think I might be jumping ahead, so stop me if you think I am. But I wanted a little bit more to come from the Renslayer Mobius confrontation. So there is that. But overall, I thought it was a really fun episode to watch. Not the most action-packed, but the most information.
Yeah, it almost felt like an epilogue to the second to last episode, because it was so action driven in the void, and then this was so sort of exposition and talky. You're right, Wendy. That's a very good point. We should be clear that while Jonathan Majors will play Kang, this wasn't necessarily Kang. This was a different version of Kang. The real Kang the Conqueror, I think, is what we'll see in Ant-Man. So it's very interesting. Also, we don't really know where Renslayer is at this moment. She ended up taking off, saying, I'm going to try to find free will. We don't really know what that's about, although we obviously know the character's connection from the comics to Kang. So I would bet there's some open stuff there. We should also mention the end of the episode. So Sylvie does go ahead. Loki says, no, and there's a little fight between Loki and Sylvie. Loki says, no, let's think about this for a second. He might be telling the truth. Sylvie just wants her revenge, so she goes ahead and kills Jonathan Majors, kills this version of Kang the Conqueror, and of course he sort of threatens, "I'll see you again soon." And then Loki, Sylvie sends Loki back to the TVA. But what we discover with Loki at the very end of the episode is that Loki has not been sent back to the version of the TVA on the timeline that he left. So at the very end, Mobius and Hunter B20, I believe is her name, right?
B15.
B15, thank you. They don't know who he is. And what's interesting to me is not only do they not know their personal relationship to Loki, they don't know what a Loki is. And this whole series has gone out of its way to set up the idea that Loki is the biggest trouble for the TVA throughout history, that all the Lokis cause all the trouble. So it's interesting to me that now he's in a timeline where not only they don't recognize what a Loki is, but now we see the Kang the Conqueror version, or assuming that that's the version, that is now the statue instead of the Timekeeper statue. So Wendy, let me throw it back to you and then we'll go to Rama. But what do you think the significance of that is? Obviously, we're leading into a second season of Loki and something else that we'll talk about next. But what do you think about this ending, this cliffhanger?
So I've watched probably too many, yet not enough explainer videos for the season finale of Loki, something I like to do just to get everybody's theories and deep dive and smuttiness in there. I think because before Sylvie actually embedded her blade into Jonathan Majors' chest, he said, "Oh, we've reached the threshold," which means to me the intention of Sylvie hadn't changed. She was going to go forward with this no matter what. If she had to kill Loki to do it, she was going to do it. She didn't do that, but the decision had been made, and I think that's when the branching had actually started, prior to her actually killing Immortus, Jonathan, or should I say the man who remains. It just may be easier to keep it that way.
Right.
So I think when she inevitably pushed Loki through that temp door, he lands back in a TVA, but because of the time branching that was happening just a little bit before he did, it is not the same TVA, I think, that he landed in, which I'm kind of still wanting to figure out, because the TVA doesn't exist on a timeline. So how is there multiple ones, right? But it is obviously a very different scenario, because B15 and Mobius didn't recognize him. There's also somebody with eagle eyes out there spotted that as he's walking through the library. And again, the TVA is pretty big and we haven't explored every single inch of it, but there were, from a previous episode when Mobius and Loki were in the library, when Loki was kind of okay, I guess I'm going to work with this guy. They were walking, and in the background, you can see the 3 letters. And in this episode, you see those 3 letters as well. Similar setting, but the 3 letters are completely different from the previous episode. So that could mean different TVA, or it could mean different part of the library. But so there's a lot of theory going on there. I do think it probably is a different TVA. I guess we're going to get an explainer on how some sort of in season 2, like how it started, like last season on Loki, sort of a thing, and explain. But I think that if it's a different TVA that exists on the timeline of Kang the Conqueror, that's why his statue is like very prominent.
I agree. Yeah, there's a lot of I saw a lot of memes of like Matrix Reloaded, sort of that this has ending had a kind of Matrix feel to it. Also, of course, the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes, the Ape Lincoln, as I think it was called. So there's a lot of those memes. Rama, what did you think of sort of this cliffhanger going into season 2, and maybe something else that we'll talk about next? What did you think?
Yeah, exactly what you said. The first impression I got was Charlton Heston figuring out this was Earth all along. It wasn't some other planet. It was like so it was a Planet of the Apes kind of spin to that twist ending. But I'm going to refer back to Wendy, and yes, that the possibilities are limitless. We only explored the TVA probably on the surface, so can't wait for season 2 for more of that. You mentioned underwhelming. The only underwhelming part to me was that, it was just so recent that we had WandaVision, and Agatha Harkness was the puppet master pulling the strings.
Right.
For to have Kang be the puppet master pulling the strings, it seems like redundant, like a rehashing of the formula again. But I get it, though. I get it. It's a running theme in Marvel. Thanos pulling the string. In Zack Snyder, it was Darkseid, behind Steppenwolf. So it's something that's redundant, but it's something that I can accept.
That's a really good point, Rama. Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm glad you brought that point up. Well, we did get sort of an end credit scene. It was a little bit of a cheat, I think, but the end credit scene basically is saying that, and we haven't had this with any Disney Plus series yet, or at least the Marvel Disney Plus series, which is that Loki will return for a season 2. Loki the series will return for season 2, and then almost immediately after Disney Plus launched this episode, Marvel took the opportunity to announce that Tom Hiddleston will appear as Loki in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which makes a lot of sense. Look, we knew that Wanda was going to have a big role in the film, coming off of everything that happened to her with magic in WandaVision. But now that we've, Multiverse of Madness, so we knew the multiverse was going to be included in this. We know that there's some multiverse shenanigans going on in Spider-Man, perhaps, and certainly going to be some multiverse shenanigans going on here. Loki, obviously now I think we get the idea that it wasn't just WandaVision setting up Multiverse of Madness, it was WandaVision and Loki setting it up. But this also brings up the point of what exactly will Loki do in Multiverse of Madness? Does Loki season 2 start production right after Multiverse of Madness? Like, where in sort of the Marvel and Disney Plus release timeline are we going to see? Certainly we'll see Loki again first, it seems, in Multiverse of Madness, and then maybe the series after that. So, Rama, let me ask you, what did you think about this news? Did it make sense to you? Are you excited, even more excited now for Doctor Strange than maybe you were before?
Yeah, and thank you, Jamie. I think you broke the news to me. I was like, whoa, it was quite a scoop. So I'm really thrilled. I'm really thrilled about this. Big fan of Loki, big fan of Doctor Strange. I mean, I was expecting Loki to still play around in the Thor cinematic universe, but now he's jumping into Doctor Strange. So that's cool. That's cool. Oh, by the way, just want to also add that DC, the Flash movie, also has is going to have their own multiverse.
Yes, so excited.
Yeah.
So excited about that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that Marvel decided to really embrace the multiverse as soon as they heard DC was kind of doing something like that. I got to imagine that that's not a coincidence that both.
But I also think sorry to cut you off. I just want to throw out, I don't want to pit Marvel against DC. That's not what we're about here. So before anybody in the comments jump blah blah blah, we love both. We, as you can see, tell by Jamie's entire setup behind him, we're fans of comic book movies. And I also just want to acknowledge that both comic books do have the multiverse. So that's it's a very much like a thing that's existed already. And I kind of do want to say it is a little, to me anyways, it is a little bit of a coincidence, because I think if you look at it, both of them were building up to it already. It just took Marvel 4 phases to get, or 3 to 4 to get there, where I think with DC, Flash, that was always like, I guess for most comic book fans, it's like a known thing. So I think as soon as they introduced Flash, we're like, oh, it's coming. I think Marvel, I think it just happened to kind of match up around the same time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, both comic book companies deal with multiverses and have for decades. So it's absolutely, I don't want anyone to think that I was saying one company is copying the other, but I don't think it's a coincidence that both companies have now decided to really dive into their version of the multiverse. That's too much of a coincidence for me to buy that it just happened at the same time. But they're both big parts of the mythology of these stories. So I think it's great that that's happening. Wendy, what are your thoughts on how Loki is going to fall into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness? Do you think it's a cameo? Do you think that a lot of what happened at the end of the Loki series will be then adapted into the? I mean, as we know, Doctor Strange is also in Spider-Man. So will this movie be picking up loose ends from not only Spider-Man, but WandaVision and Loki as well?
We're getting Spider-Man first, correct?
Correct. Spider-Man's Christmas.
This Christmas, and
March.
then, okay. So, yeah, I don't know how big of a part Loki will play. I imagine it's more than a cameo, but I don't think it's a full, I don't think he's going to be in the movie the whole time. But again, I'm always wrong about this, so I'm probably the worst person to ask for a prediction. I do think, though, that he now, because of the show, has been established as a pretty important person that can bridge across various multiverse or timelines, because he definitely knows. And putting him in there with Doctor Strange is actually perfect. I think it was at the end credit scene for the Doctor Strange movie where Thor visits Loki at the Sanctum, and he said, oh, your brother's a problem, and I've seen all these scenarios, and your brother Loki is a problem. And I didn't think much of it at the time. It's kind of well, yeah, Loki's mischievous, and that's what he does. And I didn't think that would kind of play into what we're seeing today, where it's did Doctor Strange somehow see the possibility of all this? Who knows? Because at Endgame, he's sitting there doing his thing, and he's there's only one outcome. So... Right. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think there is a pretty important part that Loki will play in this. I don't know if it'll be I don't think we're going to see him right at the beginning.
Right.
And it's still very much a Doctor Strange movie.
Did you see the meme that was going around that had to do with the Doctor Strange, the first movie's end credit scene with Loki? So it was basically Doctor Strange saying, oh, Wanda kidnapped an entire town, no problem. 2 Asgardian brothers are hanging out together in New York. You got to come and talk to me.
Yeah.
I just hope Loki's appearance on Doctor Strange movie is not gonna be Jami's Lady Sif time loop sequence.
Oh yeah, so that's what I wouldn't want. That's what I wouldn't want.
Yeah,
I want something a little bit more.
Yeah, it's more substantive.
A good job with the mythology and really setting up a whole new, because I wasn't quite sure, we're taking the Loki from the end of Avengers, he's dead now, but now we're going to take this other version and play with him, where we all got used to the version that Thanos killed. Mm-hmm. I wasn't quite sure how this series was going to go. And then very quickly, I fell in love with this version of Loki again. He changed and grew. Yes. And so I hope this Loki, while we know there are many variant Lokis out there and lots for characters for Hiddleston to play in the future. Mm-hmm. I hope they really do stick with our Loki that fell in love with Sylvie. I like them. I like that performance. So I hope we get to see him moving forward. Well, also kind of in the Marvel, definitely in the Marvel universe, although we can discuss that. This week, a very interesting sort of viral video was launched for the movie Free Guy. So Free Guy stars Ryan Reynolds as well as Taika Waititi. And as we know, Ryan Reynolds, of course, is Deadpool. And we see him here with Korg, Taika's character from Thor Ragnarok and Avengers Endgame. And they basically did like what we do. They kind of did they were doing a podcast and they were doing a trailer review of the Free Guy trailer. So there's a lot of meta stuff going on here. I definitely recommend to check it out. It's cute. And I think you sort of see the Disney Fox synergy working here. But my question to both of you, and I'll start with Rama, is this canon? Is Deadpool officially a member of the MCU? Some people say yes. What do you say?
I say yes, and I think it's been official since Disney bought Fox, which owns Deadpool. And this is a sweet and very endearing combo here in this video because, like you said, Taika and Ryan had gone way back, and they played. Taika played a sidekick in Green Lantern movie.
That's Ryan. Right. Yeah. Very good, Rama. Yes, I forgot that.
So what better way to welcome Deadpool into the MCU than those two best buds?
I totally forgot about that. Oh my God. I was trying to block Taika's character on that movie because it wasn't a very good character. But Wendy, is this official? Obviously Disney Fox put this together. So can we I would imagine that even this type of advertisement doesn't get made without Kevin Feige's approval. Do you think?
Oh, yeah, everything gets approved and you don't get just, because it's not just Taika isn't just playing Korg. Yes, he is in this video that we're talking about, but he is deep, working with Disney, not just on the Marvel front for Thor, Love and Thunder, but he's also directing, Star Wars episodes for the live action.
Right.
There's a lot of involvement and Ryan Reynolds, obviously, there's a lot of passion for his character, Deadpool, and of course his movie. So this totally makes sense. It's such a brilliant marketing move. I accept it as canon.
Yeah, I do too. I totally agree with what both of you said. This didn't happen by accident. This didn't even happen by Ryan saying, Taika, let's do this. Obviously.
I think that's how it started. I bet you it was a text message.
For sure. But to your point, they're not going to be able to get the CGI companies to make Korg and to do all that and without the permission of the overall Disney umbrella. So I think that we can sort of assume that this is official. The first meeting Deadpool has with another MCU character. So Wendy, let me throw this to you and then I'll ask you, Rama. How would you like to see, assuming this is the beginning of that integration of Deadpool into the MCU, once they do Deadpool 3, how do you want to see MCU characters fitting in? Or do you want to kind of keep it to the sort of Deadpool established characters, even if a couple of those are X-Men like Colossus, for instance?
That's the dream, right? To have Deadpool actually continue to interact with X-Men. But I really think we're going to see that for a while. There's probably going to be more of a hint to that, in Deadpool 3, because that's what Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds likes to do. But those characters under the now Disney umbrella has not really been established. So we don't know if they're bringing over Colossus and all the other characters or what they're going to do with that. So I'm very curious to see what sort of announcement we're going to get in the next year or so. It's not going to be tomorrow, I don't think. But for some of the characters for Deadpool to interact with, I think the Guardians of the Galaxy would get a kick. I would get a kick out of that interaction for sure. And I'm trying to
team up. Yeah,
that's a great team up, or the Asgardians, Thor, because it kind of same thing. They're not of the earth, so I feel that because they're just wackier and it's just more fun. That's why I was thinking Guardians. But if we want to stay grounded on Earth and not put Deadpool out in space, gosh, I'm trying to think. Spider-Man
would be pretty great.
Yeah.
Spider-Man would be pretty great. I could see that happening. Rama, let me ask you, because, would you like to see it where maybe it's just Deadpool, Domino, and, Cable that kind of come over to the MCU? Maybe it's just Deadpool. He kind of leaves that world behind and now he's interacting with the MCU characters. Or would you really like to see Deadpool 3 as sort of be the finish of what they tried to do at, what they started at Marvel Fox. And then once they get the third one done, then they can kind of maybe with X-Force or other Deadpool things start to, spread him around the MCU.
To me, all options on the table. I'm for both ways, and I would love to see, MCU characters crossing over to Deadpool and Deadpool crossing over to MCU. Would be funnier if whenever MCU characters crossing over to Deadpool, they're not they're allowed to curse. They're allowed to F-bombs. When Deadpool crosses over to MCU, like what's going on? I can't curse even if I try. So
that would be funny. That would be very Deadpool. That would be very Deadpool-esque.
It'd just be like a 30 second just hit continuous bleeps because he can't, and like little censor bars.
That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot that they want to do with that character. There's a lot they can do with that character. So I think it, and it makes a lot of sense with that character being such a self-aware character. There's all sorts of fun that they can have, winks to the camera and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing what they do with that. Well, moving away from Marvel, sort of, but never exactly moving away from Marvel. Matt Shakman, who directed several episodes of WandaVision, was announced to be taking on Star Trek, boldly going where no one has gone before, and will direct the next Star Trek theatrical movie. This is not a Paramount Plus series. The interesting thing here is that we don't know if this is going to be a continuation of the Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto cast, or if it's going to be kind of a reboot, start new, a different cast, a different Star Trek timeline. Rama, let me ask you, first, what do you think about Matt leaving the MCU and coming over to Star Trek? And then what type of Star Trek movie do you think or hope this might be?
Oh, I'm a huge Trekker, so I'm really excited about this news. And Matt Shakman, he also directed The Great and Game of Thrones, so he's a fantastic storyteller. And so, in Matt Shakman, I trust, I would say. And then, I think if he handles this, he's going to, I have so much faith that he's going to handle it really well. My big question is, if this is a continuation, then how is he going to address Anton Yelchin's absence as Chekhov? Because, even Simon Pegg once said that I don't think we're going to do a fourth one because, Anton's gone. So,
yeah.
But now that it's happening, I mean, are they going to pull off a Paul Walker CG face replacement, or are they going to just kill him off somewhere, off screen? That's the big question to me.
Well, it's interesting because Chekhov was actually not an original member of the Star Trek TV series, if I'm correct. I believe that George Takei went off to make a John Wayne movie during one of the hiatuses and didn't get back in time. So that's how Chekhov became a member, sort of replacing Sulu. Now, obviously, the JJ movies introduced them at the same time. So as much as I love Anton Yelchin, and this is not in any way derogatory towards him, I think you can do Star Trek without Chekhov, I guess is kind of my point. But that's also a very good point, that he was a major member of that cast. So how do you go forward with that cast without him? I would say he as an actor was more pivotal to the cast than the character is to the story. But you still want to be respectful of that actor. So, yeah, I kind of see this maybe going with a new cast and a new direction. I think it would be really interesting if we later find out that this is the Tarantino script, but that Shakman's going to direct it. I mean, we know Tarantino's not directing it. We don't know what script they're using. So, Wendy, what are your thoughts?
Interesting. You both are definitely bigger Star Trek fans than I am, though I do enjoy the movies. I just wasn't able to get into the TV show. Like my dad tried so hard. But I think I blame it on him that he showed me both Star Wars and Star Trek around the same time. And as a kid, I'm like, I don't know, the one with the laser swords. And also having to watch it, just to give you a little history, watching Star Trek with English as not my native language and having to read the Chinese subtitles, it became very because it's more political and science driven than Star Wars is, that I think that's why as a kid I leaned toward Star Wars more, and then that just never changed. But it comes up in our conversation all the time, and he's like, are you watching Star Trek? No, Dad. But I think it is possible that we have a different cast for this. I think it's possible, though I kind of would personally rather they stick with the same cast. I like the cast that they have. I don't love always seeing, cast for franchise movies get recast and replaced and all that stuff. It is a touchy subject with Anton Yelchin because he was so beloved, by his fellow cast members, by crew, by the directors and everybody. Got to meet him personally once. He's the sweetest person. I think the way they handle it, kind of as Rama brought up, is that originally, I guess, Chekhov was not an original member, the core member. So you can assign him to, which I don't know how well that's going to sit with people, but you could assign him to a different task, but you just wouldn't be able to use, obviously, likeness or, audio, because I think they if they could do anything like what they did for Carrie Fisher in Rise of Skywalker, if there's any unused footage, they could maybe use it to see if it can fit into the movie, but it's got to work in the first place for within the script for that to happen. So that's kind of, I think, if they don't do what they want to do with Chekhov, kind of what we're speculating here, then they'll probably go with a different cast.
All I can say is that after the 3 movies, I mean, I was a fan of those 3 movies. They have their flaws, but I'm just down for this 4th one with Shakman. I think it's in good hands, and if they go to save another whale from another timeline again, I'm down for that too.
Yes,
so good.
Well, Rama, let me ask you this: so, are you let's assume that they're not going to use the Chris Pine cast again?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want them to still use the Kirk crew and recast for a 3rd time, or would you like to see a whole new Star Trek story, all new Star Trek characters? Obviously you can have a Vulcan, you can have a Klingon, you can have the races that from the Star Trek world that we're aware of. Uh-oh, Murphy, be quiet.
Murphy says, I have thoughts about Star Trek.
Murphy loves Star Trek. Or would you like to see, original, a recast of the Kirk cast or brand new characters? Yeah,
I would love to see brand new characters. I think it's ingrained in my brain now. Images of either Shatner or Pine as Kirk. Mm-hmm. I'm not ready for a 3rd reinvention of that just yet. So if that would be the direction, I think Matt Shakman should recast the whole cast with a new group of characters.
Because it was unthinkable at the time when we didn't really know who Chris Pine was, right? And we heard he was cast as Shatner. It was like, who can play Shatner? You're kidding. You can't recast Kirk. But then, of course, Chris Pine's amazing, and we've all grown to love him. And even Shatner likes him as a young Kirk. I mean, he said that. So I think you're absolutely right. I don't think that you could attempt to recast the core characters again. If you're not going to bring Chris's cast back, I do think that you need to
not this soon, at least
do something different, do something new. There's a lot to explore there. Well, we're going to explore by jumping on to another subject real quick. We've done a lot of Indiana Jones 5 casting. We talked when Mads Mikkelsen was cast, when Phoebe Waller-Bridge was cast, and now I would argue a pretty legendary name to be thrown into the cast at this late a stage. The great Antonio Banderas will be joining Harrison Ford. We don't know anything about who he's playing, what he's doing, but we can have lots of speculation now. I think, I don't know. I mean, I think we sort of have decided that Mads is probably playing the villain. So I don't know if Antonio is maybe another villain. I'm guessing maybe he's more. I'd love to see him as another archaeologist, right? I'd love to see him as another sort of version of Indiana Jones. But I was kind of hoping that that's what Phoebe would be playing, because I think the movie's set in the late 60s, early 70s, somewhere around there. So I'd love to see her sort of, the women first kind of movement, feminist, archaeologist, his Harrison's Indy's sort of contemporary. But I think it'd be fun to see Antonio do the same. So Wendy, what do you think about Antonio being cast? villain, hero, friend to Indy? What do you think he's going to play?
I love that he's joined the cast, first of all. I really just enjoy his presence on screen. So this is really like a great, again, I feel like it's Indiana Jones 5 or like Knives Out 2, like everybody's in who's in this cast now? No, it's a great addition to the film. I initially was thinking he'll probably be the villain, but it kind of slipped my mind that Mads is probably also going to be the villain. And then you kind of threw the idea of like, you'd like to see him as, you know, a fellow archaeologist. What if, speculation here, it's a whole slew of rivaling archaeologists. And it's like a rushed against time to go after whatever artifact first person gets. Obviously, it's going to be Indy, right? But it'll just be, it'll be fun to see the the rivalry between all of them. You know, because we were thinking Phoebe Waller, like, is there more detail about her character?
I don't think we've gotten any. I don't think we've gotten any.
Okay, more I don't think so either, because I remember researching it. I came up empty-handed. But we were thinking, I think in a previous episode, that maybe she is kind of under his tutelage, under Indy's tutelage. You know, but what if we flip that around and it's like archaeologists of different experiences, different age, all going after this? Like, that would make it a really fun movie.
I like that. Like, and then it's almost like Mad World, right? Like, it's kind of like a scavenger hunt for the I like that a lot.
And you have Matt Mikkelsen just popping up in their path, like, thwarted again.
He could be another archaeologist as well,
this is true.
but then be the villain, the true villain. I hope that they don't do a Ray Winston thing where, like, Antonio is we're told he's Indy's longtime helper, and then he betrays him like in the first 15 minutes of the movie. So I hope we don't do that. And I also want to mention that this is not the first time Antonio Banderas and Harrison Ford have appeared in a movie together. Fans of the Expendables series will remember Expendables 3 had the two of them together for the first time. Rama, what do you think about this casting and what role he might play?
Well, you know, in the original trilogy, in Indiana Jones punched Nazi Germans, and then the Kingdom of Crystal Skull, he punched the Soviets. I think this time he's gonna punch a discotheque owner. So maybe in the 60s, 70s, somebody who owns a disco club, he's gonna fight him off.
Or like a punk, like a CBGB punk, you know what I mean?
But I guess I think I'm alone on this, and that I'm not really looking forward to Indiana Jones 5. You know, I've been hearing like stories about Harrison Ford getting injured left and right. I'm just waiting for this franchise to get rebooted. I'm like, Harrison Ford should just relax, enjoy his money. You know, he doesn't need to prove anything to anybody. I just don't think Indiana Jones 5 is something that needs to happen. That's just my opinion.
Rama, that's a good point. I actually want to sort of agree with that. I mean, I'm kind of on board now that because it's happening, we can't stop it. But at the same time, I kind of feel like, 4 wasn't good. And they probably should have stopped at 4. It feels like 5 is them trying to, kind of fix what they did wrong with 4. Now it's funny because fans look back and 2 is actually considered a lot better than it was before 4 came out. I remember growing up, like 1 is amazing, 2 wasn't very good, 3 was great, 3 totally, like, I put a bow on it and kind of fixed everything wrong with 2. Because of 4, I think people look back now at 2 and they're like, yeah, that was not that bad. I liked the kid and I liked, Spielberg's wife and all that kind of stuff. So I do agree with you that they probably shouldn't have done 4 and they probably should do 5, but I'm trying to get excited about it now that it is happening. But I want to disagree with you, Rama, because they should not reboot this. Do not reboot Indiana. Yeah, no. Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones. I think a lot of franchises have been hurt from rebooting. You know what I mean? Ghostbusters is a good example. I think the Ghostbusters.
That's true.
Whole brand was hurt by the rebooting, and you can get into all those reasons. Yes, pro and con, but just in general, I mean, honestly, I think the Ghostbusters franchise was hurt by doing Ghostbusters 2 because it wasn't as good as the first one. If Ghostbusters was just like The Goonies, was just like that one perfect movie from your childhood, Pretty Woman, you know what I mean? Like Ghost. I think we would think a lot better about Ghostbusters, but we have, a lot of versions that didn't work. Just as an example, and I would throw Indiana Jones into that as well. Wendy, you would be happy with a reboot, with a new Indy?
I think if this fifth movie can give us like the close of the Harrison Ford's version of Indy chapter, then I'd be okay with the reboot. But they got to find the right actor for it too.
Right.
Like you just can't put any actor in the fedora and the jacket and call him Indiana Jones.
I've heard Chris Pratt's name thrown around. I've heard Bradley Cooper's name thrown around, but I don't know.
Cooper, I'm down with. I'm also down with the Chris Pine.
Yeah, Pine would be good.
I'm not sure about Pratt for Indiana Jones specifically. I'm not sure.
Because let's remember, River Phoenix played the young Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a likeness between Chris Pine and River Phoenix. So I could see Chris Pine being a little bit, older than River was, but younger than maybe Harrison was.
Yeah.
Although he's probably the age Harrison was when he did the first one.
I will say they choose to reboot it. Like, let's just wait a while. I don't want to hear when is this movie coming out? 2023?
I would imagine no earlier than the end of 22, but I think 23 is right.
Yeah, I don't want to hear about it for 4 or 5 years after that. It's you got to give it some time. It can't be like, hey, it's been a year after Indy 5. Here's a reboot. It's like, well, then that would be a little too soon. But I think inevitably it will get rebooted.
Well, over the years, there have been several Indiana Jones-esque characters like Brendan Fraser in The Mummy,
Right.
Lara Croft, Tomb Raider. I just feel like my memory of the trilogy was so perfect, and then they got tarnished by the fourth one. And I don't know if we need fifth one to.
Yeah.
We're playing crapshoot. It may or may not fix the stain that was the fourth movie. Yeah. So I don't know. That's how I feel.
I agree 100%, Rama. I agree with that statement for sure. Well, we've got about 15 minutes left. We've got a couple trailers that we want to talk about. First up this morning was the final trailer for Snake Eyes. And this trailer went in a little bit more in depth into sort of Snake Eyes' origin. And we saw a few more shots. Here's a nice shot of
Blind
Master. Yes. So now that is it opening at the end of this week or is it next week?
The 23rd.
The 23rd. So actually this week. Yeah, the end of this week. So Snake Eyes will finally be in theaters. Wendy, let me start with you. How did this trailer do for you? Did it give you a little bit more excitement? I mean, we were already pretty pumped up to see this, but how did you feel about this final trailer?
I like that it started to showcase other characters because for the previous two, it very much was, obviously featuring on our protagonist of the film, Snake Eyes, and a little bit of Storm Shadow. But then now we're getting more snippets of not just Scarlet, but Blind Master and everybody else. So it really felt like a good final trailer to give us right before the movie comes out. So I'm looking forward to it. I think the action looks phenomenal. I think the sets look really, really great. So that's what I am really looking forward to see where they go with this origin, right? To kind of explore his backstory before he takes, whether you call it the vow of silence or whatever it may happen, which path they walk with that. And to know that Larry Hama, the creator, has been on set and working with them, that makes me feel very excited to see, and they've already acknowledged that they are taking a bit of creative license with this. So I like that it was all upfront on the table. I don't think anybody's going to be shocked walking in I can't believe they did this. Well, they said that they're going to take some creative freedom to it. And this is what they did with it. And the creator of the comic book was there. And obviously he, I'm not saying he gets stamp of approval, but also he gives this stamp of approval. So
right. I'm
very excited for this.
Yeah. And Rama, how did you feel about seeing this trailer? Were you already excited for the movie? Does it give you a little extra push to go to the theaters this weekend?
Well, first, shout out to my fellow Indonesian, Iko Uwais, who will be co-starring in this film. So it's good to see him, my man, getting good gigs in Hollywood. The previous G.I. Joe movies were terrible in my book. So this will decide whether or not G.I. Joe is a filmable franchise or is a franchise that should remain as toys and comic books. So, but the trailer definitely had me sold. big fan of Andrew, big fan of Henry. Can't wait to see the fight sequences. But it all comes down to the script. How well will the origin story be, and will this be the beginning of other origin G.I. Joe stories?
Now, am I correct that none of us have seen it yet? Correct?
I am seeing it this week, but I have not.
Okay, got it. So some press have already screened it.
And good.
I've heard some rumors. Now, these are all just rumors. I cannot confirm. But what I've been hearing is that Snake Eyes will not become silent in this film. That's being saved for future sequels.
Ooh, interesting.
Okay. That he does not become disfigured in this film either. He will wear the mask and the costume, but he will continue to talk and look like Henry, at least through this film and possibly a couple sequels. And that they're saving that for a future
the ensemble film, I'm guessing.
For the G.I. Joe films, correct. And I've also heard while we know Scarlet obviously is in the movie, there's very little G.I. Joe talk in this movie. There's not a lot of G.I. Joe. They do a little G.I. Joe Cobra setup, but not as much. It's not a G.I. Joe movie. It's a ninja movie. That's what I've understood. So my question to both of you, and Wendy, you can start, and then Rama will get your thoughts, is if that's true, and again, we don't know. I haven't seen it. This is just what I kind of heard through the grapevine.
Yeah.
How do we feel about that?
It's interesting that it kind of took me by a little bit by surprise. I don't hate it because it's called Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origin. I don't think anybody was expecting we're going to get, here's how we're going to start it off, and then we're going to go right into a G.I. Joe ensemble movie. Like these, they're reestablishing the characters. They're kind of introducing them to the general audience who may have no idea about G.I. Joes, which is like super possible.
Right.
Because not everybody is like as nerdy as all of us.
Well, it's an old property. It's an
older property.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think they do need a couple to, if you want to follow kind of the DC Marvel ensemble formula is like, you want to flesh out these stories for the more well-known characters that we kind of talked about, and then hopefully introduce some of the lesser known characters but are beloved in the comic book. And then you put them all together in that G.I. Joe. You gotta build up the conflict and the tension between the Joes and the Cobras. So you gotta have, or at least the backstory, because otherwise you give them one movie, here's Henry Golding, and then you jump into the next and people are gonna be like, what? It just happened so fast. And I think in our minds, it's happening quick because we already know what happens.
Right.
Like we're so used to it, but we have to remember that they wanna establish it and let them take their time, do a couple of solo movies, and then we can get into like a, ensemble film 2-3 movies down the road.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they're taking the slow roll, but I mean, I think to that point, if the movie's entertaining and the story's good, then I don't care. If it's a good movie, it's a good movie. So Rama?
Just real quick, I gotta agree with Wendy. I think that if they're trying to set this up for something much bigger down the road, let them have it. All these things that may not be, or all the things that we are familiar with that may not be in the movie, I'm cool with that as long as they set it up for something awesome down the road. And just a last point, I also want to see. Knowing is half the battle. Hopefully they add some like PSA at the end of it. Like,
yeah, I feel like that's something that they got to squeeze in.
Yeah, right.
Yo Joe is gonna get in there somewhere.
Stay on drugs, people.
Oh my God, Rama, that's so great. I really hope I see that. I'm gonna be that one journalist like laugh out loud in the theater if they put that in.
Well, yeah, it could be just like, knowing is half the battle.
Oh God, please let it happen.
Well, we have a few minutes left. Before we end, we want to talk about a television trailer, a teaser trailer, in fact, that was released this week for Y: The Last Man, which is the beloved, really seminal Brian K. Vaughan graphic novel and series from, I'm going to say it probably came out 10, 15 years ago now, but brilliant series. Comic book series, kind of reinvented a lot of the genre, and it's really it's in the title. Y: The Last Man? Yorick Brown is the last man on Earth. I don't even know how to explain it, but a sort of a thing happens, and all the men die, and there's one left, and then it sort of deals with the politics of the world now that it's 99.9% female. So, Wendy, let me ask you, were you a fan of the comic book? Were you aware of the series? And that the trailer, we should say, there's no scenes in it. There's no footage. It's just sort of a cool kind of
the trailer. So then I went and looked it up. So I was not aware of this series, but now I am super interested. I'm invested. I'm probably going to see if I can find it in the store and get it. So, no, I probably won't go to the store. I'll probably go digital because I don't have room for anymore. And my shelves are overloaded. They're like Boeing. But I definitely want to kind of get into the comics before I see the show. I love that right now they're doing a lot of, comic book to screen adaptations. We saw it with Invincible, right? And amongst many others. So I just like that we're getting various, whether it's live action or animated, like more is always great because there's so many like stories and comic books out there that's not just like a DC or Marvel. So I always welcome the opportunity to learn a little bit more about different stuff.
Yeah, it's a really great story, and it also, I think the material is really perfect for today, for where we are in the world. I mean, Handmaid's Tale's done really good. There's a lot of sort of Handmaid's Tale-esque stuff in this story. So, and FX and Hulu, I think, is actually a great home for it as well. I could have seen it on Amazon or Netflix too, but I think this is a good home for it. Rama, were you a fan of the Brian K. Vaughan series, and are you excited for this show?
I actually haven't read the comics, but I've been following this project ever since it was supposed to be a movie years ago.
Oh, wow.
Now it's a TV series. And I read somewhere the showrunners come and go, and then the lead stars come and go. So this has been in development hell for quite some time. So I hope, it sounds worrying, it sounds concerning, but hopefully they could come to just one vision and one thing that they want to do, and hopefully it comes off really well on the screen. That's all I can hope for, because I think I like the premise. I really do. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good premise. You're absolutely right. I believe at one point the director who did the last XXX, and he also directed I Am Number 4. I'm blanking on his name, but I know he was. Yeah, Caruso. Yeah, he was attached to do it for a long time as a movie, and then you're right, they had some showrunner issues and cast changes. I believe Diane Lane is now in the cast and will be in the cast as well. So, and Brian K. Vaughan, for fans that don't know, was started as a huge comic book writer, but then, of course, went on to write Lost and wrote some of the best episodes of Lost. He did a lot of the Desmond time-traveling episodes in the later seasons, for those who remember. So, yeah, it should be interesting to see, and FX does some great stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what the show ends up being. But we are out of time for this week. We got through a lot of topics, and we were very excited to do so. I would like to thank, as always, Wendy Lee Szany for being my co-host this week. Wendy, let everyone know where they can check you out.
Thank you, Jamie. That was such a fun discussion. I didn't even realize we were up to the hour already. I definitely didn't have my eyes on the clock. So I think it was good that I didn't lead this episode, because we would still be going. You can find me everywhere: Instagram, Twitter at Wendy Lee Szany, or the Movie Couple channel on YouTube.
I agree. I think we probably could have talked another 10 minutes about Loki and the Multiverse of Madness, but we're going to end on time this week for a change. Rama, thank you so much for being our guest this week, man. You were great. Let everyone know where they can check you out on social media.
Yes, follow me on Twitter and Facebook, Ramascreen, and also subscribe to youtube.com/Ramascreen1. Jamie, Wendy, thank you so much for having me. So much fun talking with you and geeking out with you guys.
Oh, it was the best. And we want to remind you that we are just one of the shows the Hollywood Critics Association has been launching this year. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video, and tune in to Pop Council every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. We also want to mention that the Long Box with Tessa Smith and Janita Davis is on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time, 8 a.m. Pacific time. Horrifically Horrifying, that is a tough title to say, on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. with Heather Wixon and Kevin Taft. What to Stream on Thursdays at 11 a.m. hosted by Morgan Rojas, and Rama is quite frequently a guest on that show, and What's Trending in Hollywood on Fridays at 11 a.m., hosted by Scott Menzel. We want to thank all of you for tuning in, and I want to let you know that my name is Jami Philbrick, and you can check me out on Twitter and Instagram at Philbrock, and we will see you next week right back here on the Pop Council podcast. Till then, stay nerdy. Bye.
See you next time.